not my husband too. I'm tired of death too, and I'm 14 years younger than Laurel. I have lost a partner, my parents, and both brothers. In the last few months, I have lost 6 people I care about to death, including my older brother. Friends are depressed and have a variety of physical problems. 2 of our many canine companions died in the past few years. My brother-in-law, Ron, is taking care of my last sibling, Judy, who is coping with widespread terminal cancer. I worry about my sister and all our lonely and hurting friends and family. I feel blessed to be alive and, along with my partner, Art, relatively healthy. Still, aging and damaged bodies like hip replacements, backaches, and other organ recitals make up a large part of our daily conversation, even when we vow they won't. Growing old during COVID, climate change, and MAGA madness in the quickly turned ruby red state of Florida adds precariousness to most aspects of my day-to-day existence. Is this just what it is like to be age 72 with a spouse approaching 78, living in the United States in 2023? How do we incorporate grief and loss into our lives and not fall into an abyss of sadness and meaninglessness? For myself, immersion in reading and writing about loss, as well as being with others in their sorrows, brings me solace. For example, in earlier stories about a partner's lingering dying in 1995 and about my younger brother's sudden death in 1982, I wrote myself to a place I could live in and to partial understanding I could live with. I tried to integrate death and loss into my life, and I sought to keep continuous bonds with the people I had lost rather than trying to forget and move on. While the pain of each of these losses continues to visit, the intensity, frequency, and all-consuming nature of the emotions do lessen over time and join together with joyful memories and loving feelings, allowing me, like Laurel, to engage passionately in life after loss. Though reading about Laurel's sorrow in her narrative and poetry takes me back to my memories of loss, I also find that spending time with her in the stories she tells provides companionship and compassion for the experiences she and I share. Engaging with Laurel in real time and in text brings meaning to my life and a sense that we are in this together. Similarly, I am really with our dear friend Jeff and our neighbor Bobby, both of whom died in the last few months. I recall now holding both men's hands hours before they passed, talking quietly and massaging each body. You are a calming presence, both wives tell me, and I am honored to be invited into these most sacred spaces. I am with my brother Art, singing Happy Birthday and Amazing Grace together a few weeks before he dies. Though I doubt he knows who I am or who he is, for a moment he is present, feeling love and family, his beautiful voice loud and clear. Then I am at his memorial service a few weeks later in a small country church, sharing memories of him in my autoethnographic eulogy. I am with Jerry, my co-author and one of my best friends ever, who survived the Holocaust and then finally died in the hospital at 94 years old. I am there reassuring him 2 days before he passes that he is not dying, because neither I, his family, or doctors thought he was. And more than ever in our 72-year relationship, I am with my sister in ways I never thought possible. In hospice now, she has elected no more chemo, and as a result, she feels better, for now. I call her most every day, heartsick, imagining her suffering, but soothed by her deep religious beliefs, acceptance, and planning for how she will achieve a good death. I am appreciative of her counsel as she helps me cope with losing her and teaches me anew about end of life. I am happier than I've ever been, she says on the phone. I feel surrounded by love of my family and God's grace like never before. Ironically, I feel more alive and am more appreciative of the moments I have when I engage with loss than when I try to store away the idea of mortality as though it does not exist for me. Being with others in their sorrows takes me deeper inside myself than I usually go on a daily basis, where mundane and demanding matters and troubles clutter my head. Conversely, being with gets me outside of myself, and I feel more in sync with other people and their concerns. I am more able to contemplate fully and act on what is important. Being with others helps keep the abyss of meaninglessness at bay. So far, anyway. Though it is important for me to honor my pain of loss and to be there for intimates who are suffering, I do not want my involvement to pull me into the space full time. To do so would be to invite the abyss into my life. I want to be able to move away from grief, to live life, tend flowers, converse with people present, joke around, and stay open to new and recurring adventures. My first mantra is to live fully in each moment. As I participate in the joys of life, I keep death on my shoulder and give it a casual glance to remind me that life is finite. I could die tomorrow. A person I love could and will die. Those thoughts encourage me to live the best life I can. When I invite thoughts of illness and death into my life, when they wiggle their way into my thoughts uninvited, or when it is again my time to experience another loss, as it is now, I make myself feel better by saying, loss is a part of life. There is nothing unique to my situation, to my experiences. I am not being picked on. This is normal. We all lose people and we will die. Nothing unusual going on here. Do what you have to do, feel as much as you need to, learn as much as you can, and then get back to living. For a moment, and sometimes more, this second mantra makes me feel better. As part of a community in which we are all in this together, we all will have our time. But is any death really considered normal? Laurel's husband, Ernest, 94-year-old Jerry, my sister. Certainly one of my best lifelong friends losing both daughters is not normal, as she pointed out to me when I expressed the second mantra to her. For a moment, I feel humbled. No, her recent experience is not normal, and I am sorry I suggested it might be. Is the loneliness of the bereaved, the missing of the loved one, ever experienced as normal? The loneliness and missing, more than dying itself, is what I fear most. Laurel says, I have no one to take one in, you the other of the wishbone. She is finished, alone, lonely, a widow. Her words resonate. In time, all passes. Simply alone, she writes, her type growing smaller and smaller, more distant and more alone as it becomes unreadable. I shudder at the image. We are both still here, I say silently to Laurel, avoiding the space of endings. I am here now, reading and writing the story about you and me. You are there at the end of For Better and Worse, writing your poem, entitled, Here I Am, Still and Again. Yes, time passes, life changes, and sometimes for the better, I say out loud. There is still joy in our lives. Tired of writing about grief, I head downstairs for sleep. Art checks all the doors and reports on the storm brewing outside. When he comes to bed, I snuggle tight against him, cuddling and then turning to spoon, savoring our body to body and soul to soul connection. Molly, our 3-year-old terrier, burrows in between my knees and changes positions in sync with us. She gives a quiet sigh of contentment that harmonizes with my long and blissful one. Art somehow manages to squeeze even closer. Protected by our sturdy concrete safety harbor home, for now, we do not hear or fear the tropical winds and rain pounding outside. Thank you.
Over here. Thank you, Carolyn. That was beautiful.
I've had to decontextualize this to get it within the time limit, so you may have to figure out what this all means at the end. Maybe we can talk about it in the discussion period. My current project is the question, what's the purpose of old age anyway? And I take this also from a beautiful interview I saw recently with Leonard Cohen prior to his death, where he was asked the question of whether he feared death. And he said, "I don't fear death, I fear dying." Scene 1, spring 1979, my office at Temple University. I meet with Carol Gifford, a 44-year-old student working on her PhD under my direction. I am 33 years old. "I have something I need to say," Carol begins. "I wanted to tell you in person." She stares directly into my eyes, and her forewarning sends a chill up my spine. "I've stopped the chemotherapy treatments," she states abruptly. "Does that mean the cancer is in remission?" I ask. "No, Art, the cancer is still there." "Why are you stopping? What are your doctors advising?" "They want me to continue the drugs, but I've decided against further treatment. The drugs are giving me mouth sores, infections, and nausea. I lost my hair, and I'm throwing up constantly. I can't walk from one room to another without sitting down to rest. When I look in the mirror, I don't recognize myself. Who is this person I'm looking at? I want the old Carol back." "But isn't your chemotherapy your only chance of survival?" "Yes, it is. From the beginning, though, I realized chemotherapy was a long shot and cancer eventually would kill me. But I wanted to finish my dissertation and squeeze out as much time with my family as I could. Then I found I couldn't do either very well while in treatment. I couldn't concentrate on my research, and I was becoming a burden to my family. So I decided I'm not going to let my whole life revolve around being a cancer patient. No more drugs for me. I've rented a cottage on Long Beach Island. My daughter and I are going to spend the summer there, and my husband will join us on weekends." "How has your family reacted to your decision?" I asked. "They'd like to keep me around as long as possible, but they don't want me to suffer. It's a terrible contradiction. It's been good for me to get things out in the open and to experience people I love really listening to me. Cancer has taught me to differentiate the essential from the trivial. I've been thinking a great deal about that quotation you wrote on the board from Primo Levi. If not now, when?" "It's one of my favorites," I interrupt. "Mine too," Carol continues. "It's been my main argument for going off these crippling medications. I've reminded my family that I've been stricken with a fatal illness that prevents me from hiding any longer from the finiteness of life. When has become now or never. Each day takes on greater urgency. I realize the number of days left in my life is shrinking, so I better exercise whatever freedom I have as soon as possible. I had to make some tough choices. The first was to shift my identity away from that of a patient and to reclaim my desire to complete my life on my own terms. Chemotherapy could lengthen my life, but it would not complete it. I could still end up feeling as if my life was incomplete. I have to write this down, I say to Carol, scribbling a note on my yellow pad. The importance of feeling one's life is complete. I want to remember that. It's something few of us ever imagine, but most of us likely desire. Death ends a person's life, but it doesn't necessarily complete it. Carol was reclaiming her agency, taking an opportunity to do something that will make her feel her life is complete before she dies. Scene 2, Biloxi, Mississippi, April 2023. I'm 77 years old now. Carolyn, Molly, and I drive 500 miles to visit Carolyn's sister, Judy. 2.5 years ago, Judy was diagnosed with kidney cancer. One of her kidneys was removed. 1.5 years later, she had an adrenal gland removed. 15 months after that, Judy's scan showed a new tumor in her abdomen. A month later, she began treatment via chemotherapy and immunotherapy. Initially, the treatment seemed to work. Then all hell broke loose. When cancer returns, it often returns with a vengeance. We rent a house on a private beach overlooking the Gulf, anticipating that Carolyn and I could give Judy's husband a break from his extraordinarily demanding caregiving responsibilities until Judy's daughter and son can arrive. On that day we arrived, Judy was taken to a hospital emergency room 35 miles away. We spend the bulk of each of the 4 days in Judy's hospital room. Judy's abrupt predicament reminds me of Catherine Eben's book, Bottle of Lies, in which she observes, all medicines are poisonous. It's only under the most controlled conditions that they do good. Chemotherapy drugs can prolong your life if they don't kill you first. Taken off the drugs, Judy's frightening hallucinations, wildly fluctuating blood pressure, confusion, palpitations, itchy skin, and sleep deprivation gradually improve. Late in the afternoon of the 4th day, Judy's oncologist meets with us in Judy's room. We are between a rock and a hard place, the doctor begins. Judy is still confused, though we anticipate that will resolve. We don't yet know what is causing it, but we can't wait any longer. The cancer is highly aggressive. We need to get her to MD Anderson Cancer Hospital in Houston soon. But no appointments were available for 2 months. The oncologist promises she will try to get an earlier appointment. Looking over at Judy on the other side of the room, I get the impression we're in a scene from a theater of the absurd drama. Judy appears far too sick to undertake a wearisome 8-hour drive to Houston, Texas. Her husband, Ron, unwell himself, suffering from severe hearing loss, weakened by this long stretch of caregiving, wanting to muster the vanishing strength to support one last stand against this evil illness, refusing to give in to the frightening reality of isolation and loneliness he would be facing, clings desperately to the fading hope that his life partner can hang on a little longer. We had inquired of starting Judy in physical therapy at a rehab facility. When we brought up that idea, the oncologist grimaced, scanning the room. She insisted, we are running out of time. The family has to rally. Find a way, she said. This is serious. There's no time for PT. You have to get her to MD Anderson. Later that night at a family meeting at the home of her daughter, that her daughter had rented, we meet, and her husband, Ron, begins by moaning, we can't give up. She will die if we can't get her to MD Anderson. But whose decision was this to make? Judy had spoken favorably about palliative care and expressed her exhaustion with and fear of further treatments. I'm not afraid of death, she had said repeatedly to Carolyn for weeks, even months. But dying is different than death. And Judy was growing increasingly terrified of the dramatic measures that might be taken to keep her alive. She couldn't bear the thought of another episode similar to the one from which she was just now beginning to recover. Scene 3, back home in Safety Harbor, Florida. I awaken at 5:30 a.m. and cannot get back to sleep. I feel overcome by despair as images of our time in Biloxi circulate through me. I think about how the technological advances that enable me and so many people like me to experience a more extended old age may actually be detracting from our lives rather than enriching them. My consciousness is inundated with images of a bad old age, senility, incapacity, abject dependency, loss of control, forfeiture of freedom. Old age now appears to me narratively discontinuous, a breach of the narrative unity Alistair McIntyre claimed characteristic of a good life. If it is life, is it just another stage of life entirely? Something we might call post-life, an afterlife in life. Still, given a choice, most people opt for a longer rather than a shorter life. Obsessing as I am over the possible, even likely depletions of old age may become so defensively fervent as to annul a reasonable recognition of much good that may still remain, as it did for Carol and now for Judy. What I learned from Carol and from Judy is no matter how much a person may fear old age, illness, and death, choosing for or against more life involves
Are you okay to carry on? It looks like I'm muted, Candice. Still.
The art's muted. Yes, I need
We're
to
both
change
muted.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm back. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I figured it out. I reached my 8-minute limit and you shut me off. No, of course not. You know those storms we haven't been getting? We got one. All right. So David sent me a lovely email saying that I was shut off just as I hit McIntyre. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I only have 1 more minute. Can I finish?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Old age now appears to me narratively discontinuous, a breach of the narrative unity McIntyre claimed characteristic of a good life. If it is life, it is another stage of life entirely, a post-life, an afterlife in life. Still, given a choice, most people opt for a longer rather than a shorter life. Obsessing as I am over the possible, even likely, depletions of old age may become so defensively fervent as to annul a reasonable recognition of much good that may still remain, as it did for Carol and now for Judy. What I learned from Carol and from Judy is no matter how much a person may fear old age, illness, and death, choosing for or against more life involves much more than merely wanting to live or wanting to die. That is the value we place on life per se. Our decision ultimately rests on other values fostered by our lived through experiences, connected to and embedded with the lives of other people who have shaped our sense of what actions are available and what it means to have lived a good life and to complete it. Thank you.
4 months. The physical activity guidelines for adults in the UK are 150 moderate intensity exercise per week or 75 minutes vigorous activity. Older adults are recommended to stave off frailty and falls by playing bowls. While I have nothing against bowls, I do struggle with the term older and wonder, should those of us who are being shoehorned into this category call out how we are being narratively entrapped, using Alec Grant's term, by the expectations associated with the term, where there is no consensus for what an older person is. The physical activity literature has older adults as being in their 50s, sometimes in their 60s, sometimes in their 70s. Somebody said, how rude. It seems to me that an inactive life or illness age the body as much as the calendar years. So I hope this performance destabilizes some of the stereotypical beliefs about what an older body can or should do. An everyday occurrence. Carolyn Ellis is just coming back into the room. Shall we keep going? All right. David has spoken. An everyday occurrence. I run just about every day. I can't remember, though, the number of times someone has said to me, what about your knees? What about my knees? Why does everyone worry about my knees? It's my back I worry about, sitting on my backside, on my bum all day, looking at the computer screen. That's where the problem is, not my knees. Most days I run 5 miles, but every 3 or 4 days I run 10, 20, 30. I love running. I like going out when the sky is purple and the water between my home and this Welsh coast is like glass. I venture out before the world wakes up, using 84-year-old Nell's words, a participant in David's and mine research. She wasn't interested in bone mineral density, balance exercises, or blood pressure. How many people in their 80s would describe their exercise as an Arthurian knight off to seek adventure? And I'm lost in thought, analysis, writing, and conversation, creating songs, and then the day before interrupts. I saw you along Nor Road, says the woman scanning my shopping at the checkout. You're so good, she says. I'm not, I think. I don't run to be good. And the so many women who say I am good shouldn't feel bad because they don't run. Do I run early in the morning to avoid being seen? Is that because of how observed I felt when I played golf? I don't want to be put in a box by others now too. Are you training for London? A driver asks, pulling over and winding down the window. I feel interrupted and I smile, and without stopping, no, just running. But I start justifying myself in my head, carrying on the conversation of why I'm not competing in anything. I don't like competition. I run because I can, because my body doesn't hurt at the moment, because I love the quietness when people would leave me alone in the morning. The birds, the deer, the sheep, the ocean. I hear a truck coming up behind me, but stay resolutely in the middle of the narrow lane as I'm fed up moving over for trucks. At the brow, where there's just a little passing place, I speed up and move to the side. Don't move over for us, a voice bellows from inside of the flatbed truck as I watch 3 men pass by. I turn my head and observe them. The driver then shouts out, "That's bloody marvelous." The driver continues up the road. His comments make me laugh. The workmen pass by, I plod on. In anybody's book, that's impressive, says a man at the top of the hill. Stood still with his dog, both of them watching me run up the hill. As I chug up, he continues, I used to be a runner. He continues, his sentence continues in my mind, and I wonder why he stopped. Swells up. It's 5:30 a.m. I'm sleepy, but swell is forecast. I make coffee and sit quietly. David wakes up and takes tea. It's getting light. I open the patio door. The air is cool, but not cold, and I catch his eye. We can both hear the sea, and we both recognize in each other's eyes what that means. It's not good for me. We can both hear the sea. You see, when you can hear the sea from that far away, it means the swell is huge. big breakers. And I start singing in my head the Clash's hit song, should I stay or should I go now? If I go, it will be trouble. I laugh. I'm excited. I'm also apprehensive. I don't like getting pummeled. I can't manage big waves. I'm hoping for something smaller than the sound predicts. I pull on my summer suit, 3 millimeters of neoprene. It hugs my body, clings to its curve, extenuates every single imperfection. I don't mind. I like the way I look in the suit. I see a girl, my height, and I don't notice the 60-year-old lines hidden beneath the neoprene. The suit holds me in, holds me together, makes me feel good. And I'm out of the chalet like a whippet, waxing my board, and we head over the dunes. I'm taking my 7'3" ice-coloured rocket fish, and David takes his blue board. Down through the dunes, we dock and dive, skipping along barefoot. Halfway down the 200-foot drop, the dunes level out, and you get a better look at the swell, more awareness of the shape of the waves, the breeze, and it all matters. Today, the forming crests spill over in slow motion, and I'm disappointed. I started surfing during my PhD, sharing an office with David and seeing him go off stressed on a Friday night and coming back every Monday morning full of joy, watching him lean back in his chair and begin to tell me about the dolphin that swam under his board, or the bull seal that just popped up next to him and stared at him straight in the face. I'd like to do that, I thought. So the young man who gave me my first lesson explained things, taught me what a rip current is, why waves break, when to paddle out, how to put on a leash. And other than that, he didn't give me too much technique. He just let me feel the board, the waves, and I laughed so much. Me clinging into the board as it was catapulted in the white water and propelled towards shore. A year later, he caught up with me walking back from the surf. I can see why you did so well at golf, he said. I wonder what he saw a year later in that 40-year-old body. Was it my focus, intensity, a paddling against the odds? Was what he saw different to the other 40-year-old female bodies that he introduced to surfing? Are you any good? A relative asks when he learns I surf. Did you see the big wave surfing? I shake my head, no to both. I'm useless. I'm not interested in watching. And I'm taken back to the question I'm asked by so many men when I was playing golf. Are you any good? What have you won? Oh, what's your name? By the time we get to the beach, it's obvious it's too big for me. Sure, plenty of surfers will go out, David being one of them. And they'll catch magnificent waves, maybe be watched by seals and dolphins. I wonder if I got into surfing when I was 17, I could take on these waves now. Would I be out the back on days like this? Well, you can get out the back, I tell myself, but then you'll just sit there. You won't go for anything. If I'd begun surfing when I was in my teens, would I not be so fearful of being held down in my lungs full of water, wishing I'd gone for a run? When I played golf, I was cautious. It's not about aging. I knew I couldn't take on the carries over water. I was calculating, stuck to what I could do. Some surfers call it the walk of shame, coming in without getting a ride. I didn't even get wet. And I walked back. I call it the walk of sense. Why would I push myself and not enjoy it? I want to enjoy it. And so sometimes I turn around disappointed. No rides, no surfing with seals, no glint of a shard of sunlight through a wave, no paddling out with a friend, and no dancing along a wave. Thank you.
Ready? So these are just a few of the images we are bombarded with in the media, sending confusing signals what it's really like to be a middle-aged woman. The grey-haired lady at the top, taken from an advert where she states she is 50 years old. Yet, as we are also seeing, we are presented with glamorous celebrities whose headlines attached celebrate them for their figures in their 50s.
In our research, we aimed to tell our stories through our collaborative writing. Writing alone, together, voices seeking a home. Our process involved engaging in dialogue through a series of emails, which we then reflected on and analysed.
Over 50s are not all the same. The first of my emails to Sarah expressing my anger at society's views of middle-aged women, highlighted by the advert for British Seniors for Life Insurance for over 50s, where a woman with grey hair said she was 50 and wanted to protect her grandchildren's financial security. Would I be more accepting if not recently divorced after 25 years married? Finance was a contentious issue, and I don't want to be perceived as old before my time. Am I confusing anger with fear? According to Rees, Strassenberg and Freund, stereotypes have consequences to our self-esteem as we self-stereotype in aligning ourselves with a social group. What Crowley states, only females report anxiety regarding fears associated with regular as opposed to immediate financial worries following grey divorce.
Okay, I'm frustrated as well. I don't recognise myself in the images of middle-aged women in the media. This makes me feel invisible. Have we been cancelled? The pandemic seems to have exacerbated my feeling of being fragile. Being considered as vulnerable because I'm over 50 doesn't sit well with me. Is middle age seen simply as the onset of decline? Your anger about society's views resonates with me. The images of middle-aged women are stereotypical and outdated. Okay, I feel a growing need to rebel against society's perceptions of what it means to be middle-aged. Kohler recognised that people understand their lives in narrative form and that there is a purpose for this. Stories help us to solve identity problems. As autobiographical authors of the self, midlife adults make meaning out of it all, past, present, and future. I think I need to write the next chapter of my own life story, in which I am my own protagonist.
This makes me feel invisible. Have we been cancelled? Sarah, I notice your use of we. Are you potentially asking a painful question? Have I been cancelled? I find it hard to understand where I belong. I avoid online dating as I don't like myself in photos, yet it feels now more than ever appearance matters and invisibility is not an option. Anti-aging products are advertised as if wrinkles are the devil's work. According to Orbach, there is a huge global beauty industry with a joint marketing strategy. In the style industry, making us believe our bodies are at fault and then inventing ways of correcting them, leaving us feeling pleased when we are able to repair our imperfections. I have unconsciously absorbed a look I should be achieving. I feel I have been conned. I've become a small cog in a very big wheel. 1968, I am innocent. I have no concept of body image. 2019, I feel the needles pierce my skin as I try to erase the lines I was born with. 2020, a sterile room. A radio plays in the background and I'm awake as the surgeon's knife makes the first cut. 2021, my hair is pulled and tugged as I desire the long hair that it is impossible for me to achieve naturally. And the big wheel keeps turning.
Okay, I was recently shocked by a headline in the Sunday Times. US tech investors believe they're close to a cure for old age, which old age is an illness. Where is the dignity in growing older? Is middle age simply a transition into old age? Like you, I don't understand where I belong. I think you're right. Perhaps there's an unconscious thought that I've cancelled myself. The mirror has become a weapon, something to beat myself up with when I fail to meet the standards of perfection in the media. And yet I know these images of perfection are not real. I also know that the mirror is simply an object that reflects light. It doesn't know my story. Rather than avoiding my own reflection, I need to be able to bask in the light that is the middle-aged me. Orbach calls on us to review our attitudes to our bodies. They need to become a place we live from, rather than an aspiration always needing to be achieved. Mirror, mirror on the wall, I refuse to hear your beck and call. You cannot show the best of me, for I am so much more than you can see.
Sarah, since my divorce, I often felt guilty. My daughters remained with my ex. There is an unwritten rule in society that children should be with their mums, and as mums, isn't that always something we feel guilty about? But Sarah, in writing this, a thought came to me, shocking at first. I don't need them anymore. And rather than think of middle age as a transition into old age, I see it as a series of transitions within myself, as I engage in new roles and relationships have new meaning. such as being a single mum relating to adult daughters. I had never reflected how my roles impact my aging process, only thinking the mirror defines how old I feel. As in George, midlife can be characterised more by transitions within roles. I want my daughters to discover their own sense of self. According to Gilligan, as I move away from my role of caretaker to a flexible form of adult relating, I am transitioning into a role essential for women's development.
I was recently surprised by the emotional connection that I felt as I read a poem written by my daughter. I responded, "You needn't always be so harsh with these things. I've known you and I know you. You don't need a cotton pad to be the woman you'd like to be." Our writing highlighted a deep connection, which was empowering. I hope that our relationship has been validating for her and that it's empowered her to build a deep and authentic relationships in which she can grow and discover who she is. Surrey states that both mother and daughter are empowered in relationship as they feel pleasure in their own
We're just rebooting and we paused the presentation, everybody online, so bear with us for a moment.
Set up a dating profile on our time, a dating website for over 50s? Probably not. I'm thinking younger.
So where are we now? We both feel more in control of the choices we make regarding how we age. We embrace midlife and we feel motivated and we feel empowered.
We no longer feel angry towards negative stereotypes, and we've learned to differentiate ourselves and focus on what matters to us individually.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Oh, I'm waiting for a question or something. But I will say it was a wonderful session, and I'm sorry that I missed parts of both because I thought, Kitrina, you know, I love your work, and the last presentation really got me thinking and feeling and remembering what it was like to be middle-aged and concerned so much about my appearance and how I got responded to. And it made me think I want to write a paper now about how different I am and about my appearance. Not totally, but, you know, to a large extent. And, you know, as I look at my face on the screen, you know, to think about faces and how important they are for us as we age, and how you have to start to think about them differently. So you really got me thinking about wanting to write something about the physicality of aging. So thank you.
So yeah, so like a lot, like I have a big anxiety to like lose my parents, I think, and like it's a big thing I feel now, and I think a lot of people probably feel that. And do you guys think like that's like to Carolyn and to everyone, you know, like that fear is from a young age, and now when you get older, you feel more confident and like more, you know, that it's okay, and death, you sort of get used to the sort of concept of death.
Death.
Or like dying, or I don't know, you know.
Okay. Did you hear that question? Are you guys hearing that?
I heard, what I heard was, as you get older, you get more comfortable with appearance and concept of dying, etc. Is that right?
Yeah, sort of along those lines. Like, you know, when you're young, you feel so anxious about it. I mean, at least I do. So do you think it's like an age thing? Oh, I think right.
That's an interesting question. It really is an interesting question. I'm not sure it has a simple answer.
No.
I mean, from my experience, I didn't think about death and dying and even aging so much when I was younger until I was in my 30s, and then my partner and my brother died, and all of a sudden I, you know, was cast into that. So it had less to do with age and more to do with what kinds of experiences were going on in my life, because I was totally immersed in death and dying at that point in my life. But I do, you know, when you get older, I mean, it's on your mind more often, but I think it's, in some ways, I was going to say it becomes less dynamic or something. It just is. It's there. It's in the back of your mind. It's kind of always, it may not always be there, but it can always come to the forefront. You know, you can call it easily. And your defenses against it aren't all that strong. In some ways, it's because you don't try to make them so strong. So it becomes more of a part of your life for many of us. I think there are people who are our age and older who just still resist the idea that they are mortal and that they will die. And so we really differ in terms of that. So I'm just talking in circles, but you know, it's a very interesting question, and I'm not sure that I have a simple answer to it.
Well, we're just simply friends. It's just lovely to hear you all reflecting from different positions and different ages and different relationships with age. And just the observation that it's those kind of you know, conversations which we don't have as often as we probably should, and that's why it's lovely to have a panel like this.
Can I just chip in there? I'm amazed that somebody's, how old are you, Joshua?
Me 22.
So there's someone in their mid-22s is worried about dying. I'm wondering whether when he gets to 80, will he be less worrying about dying? Yeah.
I say like a lot of people die. Like it's a big. Like to
Okay.
be honest with you, like so like Kitrina is my supervisor. Like for my dissertation, like in my undergrad, like now. Like one of the reasons why I came to Bristol was the fear of maybe not being able to see her. So, like it's quite bad.
Did you do that?
It's quite bad. Like
Okay.
fearing
So this
that
is really,
maybe, you know, something happens in life and you know,
Yeah.
this person needed.
so what Joshua was just saying, because I know some of you online can't hear, he was saying one of the reasons he came to Bristol is I'm his supervisor and he's worried that I might die and he's missed the opportunity of coming here and doing something. And he's also anxious about his parents dying. And so the question is, as we get older, do we worry less about people dying that we care about? Or is this just the human condition that we have to, like Caroline, your mantra, making the most of now, because tomorrow we won't have an opportunity? Art.
Well, that was the part of the paper that I had to cut, was the very first part of it. And I traced through what it is to be, I guess it doesn't have to be the 70s, it could be the 60s, it could be the 80s, but your entire social network is at a point of vulnerability, of physical vulnerability, as well as in many cases, cognitive disability. So it's an everyday occurrence. My email is like a MASH ward with different people reporting what their ailments are and how they're being treated. So there's no, you know, as far as I'm concerned, not only is there no escape, I don't really want to escape. I want, you mentioned in the opening, the idea of generosity and compassion. I want to maintain these relationships as long as I can and to be there however I can for the people that I've had relationships with for so many years. And so it's not an evaluative thing as much as it's, can I be with? Carolyn used the expression being with. How are we with what matters in our life, whether it's people or objects or plants or animals. It's a way of being. And so that, you know, that really matters. It does, however, press on you. I mean, you do, I can only speak for myself. I think generalizing about these things is very dangerous or difficult at the best. Is I can only speak for my experience here, recognizing that probably there are many others who experience it close to the way that I do. Was I like this at 22? Hell no, when I was 22, I didn't trust anybody over 30. Remember that. So, yeah, things do change over time. Time, as we know in narrative and so forth, time is crucial.
And I think when you're young, unless you have a death experience with someone close to you where it becomes real, death is kind of an abstract idea. And as Art's saying, when you get to be our age, death is no longer an abstract idea because it is going on with your social group. It's happening all the time. And so it's an adaptation of trying to figure out how do I deal with this? I mean, it's really what my paper was about. How can I be compassionate and caring and there for people and not go into the abyss of hopelessness? And so that's something I feel that I'm working on a lot of the time. It's a lot of my consciousness, where it wasn't my consciousness as a young person. And it's not all bad, by the way. I mean, there's some really real connective kinds of things that are going on, and compassion, and you're accessing parts of yourself that you might not have even known they were there. The caring and love and that you have for other people, and how important relationships are to you that might have been in the background when your whole emphasis was on either partying or work, or some combination of that and the mundane details of everyday life. Now a lot of my consciousness is on, who do I want to be to other people and with other people, because I know that I will lose them or lose myself. So it really becomes a principle of how to live a good life. I mean, part of a principle of how to live a good life. So it's not all bad, but it's also challenging.
Jamie, if you just want to.
Yeah, it was just to finish just saying, I think one of the beauties of a panel like this is observing people at all different life stages, and the autoethnographic kind of sensibility, which you see in all of your work of renegotiating your senses of self and senses of identity. And what the observation was simply that process never ends, that you see that, and of being able to do that at whatever life stage you are, whether you're, in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or whatever. And it's so it's just a lovely to see that in the autoethnographic kind of sensibility, I suppose. So thank you.
Thank you.